doing? My name is Kevin, if we haven't met, but many of us have met, and I just am working on some new funk music for your listening pleasure, and wanted to talk to you today about a couple topics that are near and dear to my heart. The blues, linguistics, because I'm a nerd, the Allman Brothers band, and Stevie Ray Vaughan. So, blues music is traditionally referred to as the 12-bar blues. And it's broken up really into three sections lyrically. And if you think about, like, to mention the Allman Brothers band, the first time I heard Statesboro Blues, I knew I liked it. And think of the first verse of Statesboro Blues. Wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low. And they repeat it. Wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low. And then the third is the clincher, which is, you got no nerve turning Uncle John from your door. So what we have is AAB, a lyrical structure, or a structure that they use in poetry too. They analyze poetry that way too. And it's basically two of the same thing and something else. Repetition, and then a contrast. And so I sort of have a theory, and it's been verified, with people that I've talked to that are a lot older than me, who have been around the block musically more than I have, that a lot of blues musicians improvised verses of blues songs, and they would, you come up with a phrase, and you say the same phrase again, and while you're singing that second phrase, you're coming up with something to rhyme with it. So, these politicians, they all want to get our vote. These politicians, they all want to get our vote. But then they take all our money and don't give us a thank you note. Something like that. So, and that has to do also with how I feel Dickie Betts, Greg Allman, and Stevie Ray Vaughan, who are all white musicians, incidentally, playing blues music. How they phrase, and that's who I initially gained entry to that music with, by way of classic rock radio, which is still dominated by white artists. They would play Jimi Hendrix, they would play a few things, but it's mainly white artists. And then I got into actual blues music. People like B.B. King and Buddy Guy, Freddie King, Albert King, the various Kings, Hound Dog Taylor. Check out Hound Dog Taylor. He was from Detroit, and he played cheap Japanese guitars, and he had an extra pinky finger. He had 6 fingers on his hand. Like, no shit, he really did. So, the lyrical structure of the blues, being AAB, uses repetition, and then there's a variation there. And so not only does it rhyme, it creates a contrast, but it ties everything up neatly in a bow. And so a 12-bar blues progression, I've heard people refer to it as 1-4-5, but it's not just 1-4-5. In music, we give numbers to scale degrees. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, again. Do being 1. We'll go E. Do, re, mi, fa, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our 4 chord. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's our 5 chord. And that 1-4-5 is the building blocks of Western harmony and Beethoven and Haydn and Mozart and all those wonderful cats from Europe. But those 3 chords make up the blues, and maybe that was the European contribution to blues music. Those the cadence of the as I am slightly out of tune, but for blues effect. So the first chord. And here comes the fourth chord. Play a little 5 chord at the end to bring us back to the top again. But those politicians, they all wanna get our vote. And I sing the same thing again. Those politicians, baby, they just wanna get a vote. But then they take all the money, don't even leave us a thank you note. Those pretty faces that I see on my TV. So I just made something up. And I'm going to sing it again. And I'm going to think about something to rhyme with it. Those pretty faces, baby, I see them on my TV. Well, pretty as they are, they're not what they seem to be. So repetition is something that is what listeners hold on to. They recognize it. You play something. So Mozart uses repetition. The ba-ba-da-ba-dum, ba-ba-da-ba-dum, ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. We could call that A. Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. That's the first answer to it, I guess. And then he does it again. Ba-ba-da-ba-dum, ba-ba-da-ba-dum, ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-dum. German 6. Oh, those funky chords. And does a little another phrase to tie it neatly into a bow to kind of give us closure. And so the listener holds on to the first thing. We hear something else, and then we hear that thing again. We're like, oh, I recognize that. And then they play something else to give us an answer. Now, is the first part of it a question? Maybe. It could be a question. It could be roses are red, violets are blue, or it could be, how do you feel, or what is this, or, do you love me? Do you love me? From Fiddler on the Roof. Yes, I love you, whatever, silly things. But, so, when we play guitar solos, I had a great teacher, great musician named Rodham Schwartz. Played the organ, and he still plays the organ like a mother. He's one of the best musicians around. He said you got two kinds of soloists. You have people that tell stories, and you have people that make lists. And if you make a list of ideas, the items on the list are all going to be different. And you have a succession of ideas, and they could all be different, and they're not necessarily relating to each other. And the idea is that the listener, the audience member, and also other people in the band, this is pretty crucial too, it's just a list of ideas, and everything is new. And there's no referring to the previous item on the list. But when we tell a story, there are common elements throughout a story: the setting, the characters, the conflict, the point of view, what it's being narrated by. Is it in the first person? Is it in the third person? Or is it like or is it like a Quentin Tarantino movie, which interrupts that a little bit, and then it all becomes relevant in the end, how it comes kind of crashing together through whatever set of circumstances. But the reason that people who love classic rock music but aren't necessarily into quote-unquote jam band music, they love the Allman Brothers, and they can get with a lot of the longer jams that the Allman Brothers played, because back in the day, and continuing up to, obviously not that long ago, there was a feeling with the improvisation, especially on the Fillmore record, of this use of repetition and developing ideas. And the listener can latch on to this repetition of ideas. And so Dickie Betts, Duane Allman, later on, Dan Toller, of course, Warren Haynes, Derek Trucks. And Derek Trucks, to my limited exposure to a lot of his solos, is a bit more of a list maker than a storyteller, but he's so freaking good that it's like, it's all good. Now, Jerry Garcia, okay, people talk about how when they might not like the Grateful Dead, that Jerry Garcia's playing seems noodly or spacey, and it doesn't seem to go anywhere, because Jerry tended to use repetition a lot less. And I feel like his playing was really heavily informed by the Beat Poets, by Jack Kerouac, by Allen Ginsberg, by people like that, in a stream of consciousness, all right? And the stream of consciousness it's almost like this outpouring of ideas, and there's such little inhibition or feeling of is this right? Is this wrong? Should I be doing this now? Oh no, we're just going to do it. And so what you get is solos that use a little bit less repetition, a lot less actually, and for the listener that might not be into that, it may seem like it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, but for those of us who've experienced Grateful Dead music in various stages of consciousness, it's not about the going somewhere. It's not about the arrival. It's about the journey, and it's about the space that we're in the moment. So it's a different approach. So linguistics come into play because music is a language, but it doesn't necessarily convey specific ideas, like a chord means this, or a note means this. The beauty is in the interpretation. But if we use elements of linguistics like context and syntax and using repetition, then we can create solos that make a lot more sense to a listener. So I don't know how well you can hear the guitar, but the idea is that so I used a lot of the same ideas. I spread them over octaves. Something else you can use is taking the same idea, using different notes to play with it. The same rhythmic idea. And to give things a shape, to give things a sense of repetition, a sense of referring to itself. And so here's an AAB in a blues form. do another one. There's a little answer is different. So, if you're an aspiring soloist and you want to play blues, it's not about playing pentatonic scales or blues scales or even the gospel scale. Ever heard of that one? Radham Schwartz told me about that one. It's called the gospel scale. It's the beginning of the slow blues. It's not about playing those scales, and it's not just about playing on the chords, but really referring to the lyrical structure of the blues, AAB. And if you listen to the masters of those Albert Kings, the B.B. Kings, and Stevie Ray Vaughan, they don't play they play pentatonic stuff, they play blues scale stuff, they play riffs, but they're referring to the chord changes and the lyrical structure of the blues, and they're playing the blues, not blues guitar or anything other than the blues. That's why it feels like that. So repetition, telling a story, slowing down is super important to creating a sense of repetition, because if you're playing too much stuff, or it's harder to listen to what you're playing. It's harder to hear what you yourself are doing so that you can refer back to it, to give the listener a sense of context and shape and something for them to latch onto. So that was my little fireside chat. There's no fire. About blues and lyrical structure. I thought it would be a lot more intellectual than it would be with the linguistics part. So apologies to anyone thinking that this was an academic thing, because I only went to music school, and I'm not really an academic. But anyhow, thanks for listening, and got some cool music coming out, and we'll see you around the campus, around the musical campus. So, God bless. God is doing for you what you cannot do for yourself.